Hello and welcome to another episode of Grange TV. We have with us 2014 Commonwealth Games representative for New Zealand, Mr. Mark Brewer. Hello and welcome, Mark.
How are we, Fab? Good to be here.
Thank you. I'm good. And we have with us also David Roberts, TAFE extraordinaire. Dave?
Hey, how you going?
I think today's episode is a pretty interesting episode in as far as, we're here at TAFE, at Campbelltown TAFE. I'm based out of Macquarie Fields Sport and Fitness. We have a lot of student athletes that come through these courses, through the GAP program, also the Gracie Aboriginal Pathways. And I thought, I've known you for quite a while, like on and off with the different training and that we've done. And I think it's I think your story is a really interesting story in as far as the balance. You're trying to keep your balance as a student athlete, trying to keep your career, but at the same time pursuing your dream. Do you want to kick off where you were born and what you do? And
yeah, why not?
Mark Brewer?
So Mark Brewer was just a boy from Motueka in New Zealand. So that's in the top of the South Island, pretty small town. I started out in judo because that was just cross training for rugby. I ended up there at the judo club just to chasing my older brother who was doing judo. I think I was meant for track and field or something like that, but yeah, I just chased him there, and that's how I started out in judo. Everything, you travel a long way to get anywhere from Motueka, so resources were pretty hard to get and training partners were few and far between. So
how big is Motueka?
About over 5,000, something like that, yeah.
So it's small. It's
very
small.
Yeah, it's small, but close to Nelson would be the closest city. Christchurch, 6 hours away. Yeah. And
so what happened then? You were playing rugby, my understanding is, and then you decided to stop. And what age was that?
Yeah, about 16. I was running around the rugby field and had a bit of an epiphany. Looked back at my life and just thought, well, what am I really doing here? I was chasing someone. I stopped. I just kind of looked at judo and how much influence it had on my life. And
so you'd already been doing judo?
Yeah, I've been doing it since I was 8 years old, so quite some time before that. And just thought that reflected on that being a significant part of who I was and what I was doing, from there, just put my hand up, coach, I want to go off, and never went back on.
So you went. So from there, then you went full on into judo training, like you pushed all in with judo?
Yeah, it was kind of clashing. Both sports were really clashing. I had a few injuries, just overtraining with both sports, and I really want to push myself to the limits and see what I could achieve in one or either. So,
because I see that as a coach myself, I see with young guys, with young guys in Australia playing rugby league as well, like especially in this area, doing wrestling or jiu-jitsu or whatnot. And at some point, that moment occurs where they have to, and usually around that age, 15, 16 years old, where they have to pick which one they're going to do.
I guess it's better to identify that earlier rather than later. Commit yourself to one, and you're going to train and compete to your full potential in that sport.
Then how did you, because you ended up going to the Commonwealth Games
2014, yeah. So I knew I'd have to go somewhere big, like leave the country, to leave New Zealand to be good at judo. So when I was 17, I went to Japan for 3 months, and then went purely because everyone was saying, like, you've got to get to Japan. If you want to be good at judo, go to Japan. There's just so many people doing judo in Japan. But in my mind, I wasn't Japanese. I had a different body type than the Japanese, and all over the world, like judo was successful. You got the most judoka in France, and Europe is just a hive of fighters. So they have a bit of a Bundesliga or a super campaign, like a super rugby kind of division for judo in both France and Germany and other places around Europe. So there's a lot of judo going on. So I went from Japan to Germany. Lived in Germany for a year.
Oh, for a year?
Yeah, so I was there when I was 17, and I don't think anyone believed I was 17, because who would be traveling the world committing themselves to a sport when they were 17? Everybody my age in Germany was still in school or getting ready to go to university.
Did you leave school?
I finished. Yeah, my parents wanted me to finish school, so did that.
How'd you fund those trips?
Just, pub charity and things like that. I started out really young, just earning my way. I was working on the farm. My first job at 14 was I actually jumped out the window at night and went and worked at a apple pack house. So it wasn't 3 days later my parents found out I was jumping out the window every night to go work and make my own way to get money to actually fund these things. So my first, I guess, sponsor was one of my neighbors back in Motueka. So he we had a roadside stall because I lived on a farm, and I had planted a crop of potatoes and I sold them that Christmas. I just bagged them up, put them, was selling a bag for $2. Neighbor wanted 10 kilos and he gave me $1,000. So, just saw me working hard, wanted to invest in someone that was trying to.
So you basically took advantage of somebody to.
Well, I guess
that didn't know the price of potatoes.
Yeah, fuck, there's a lot of money for potatoes, eh?
Yeah, it's $1,000.
Yeah, so I'm sure he paid for those potatoes. I think they cost him about $50 for all those potatoes, and then he went away, and then I ended up with a bit of an envelope in my letterbox, my name on it.
So then
he's my first investor, I guess.
So then you were in Germany for a year?
Yeah, I was
at 17.
Yeah, at 17.
And what was that experience like?
I'm sure I was chased around the mat, and everybody wanted to headbutt me for that year. So it was hard. In Europe they're brawlers, so it was physically really hard. And nobody realised I was 17. To be fair, but when everyone asked my age, I was just like, "Oh, how old do I look?" They're like about 25, and okay, right, yeah, about there. I'd never actually tell anyone my age, so I was actually training with the Olympic team. I was training in an Olympic centre, and I was training with the Olympic team. They just didn't know how old I was. They just thought I was kind of not up to standard because I was a New Zealander,
Yeah, is that a stigma that people from Oceania carry?
I guess so, because there's not a lot of judo here, and there's not a lot of them around Europe and training full time over there. They see very few, and I guess they look down on you because you're not from France, or you're not from a high profile judo country.
What were you doing for money when you were in Germany at that time?
I just got supported by my parents, I guess. They chucked a bit of money in. Biggest sponsor in sport, I guess, their parents, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I worked at a pub.
That will go well with your training.
Yeah.
You do 2 a days or 3 a days.
Yeah, that was only the start of it. So, I worked in an Irish pub. I didn't know much German.
Luckily,
I learned it on the way.
They don't drink or anything. The Irish, they're very.
You're home by 10. Germans have got the same reputation, so it didn't matter what country you're in.
And so you're working in a pub, trying to get your judo up to a world standard.
Yeah.
And you now 17, 18 now. Were you studying at the time? Did you go to uni?
Not yet. I had a gap year before I started studying. My plan was to do exercise science at Massey University, but I just went to Germany to get in the deep end and be way out of my depth and get better. Right? You need to train with the best to be the best, and that's what I did.
And so then, why'd you leave Germany?
Just to progress judo. My visa ran out after a year, so where do you go from there? I knew I needed a better job, so I went to Britain. So I needed a way to support myself and earn a bit more money. So I went to Britain. Yeah.
England's got very good judo.
Yeah, I actually ended up in Scotland. So
okay.
I looked at a few universities even around there just to see what was accessible and what I could do. I went to Bath, check out Bath. They had a good judo team at the time. I also went to London. But Edinburgh actually struck me as the best full-time program.
So the Scots have very good judo as well?
Yeah. A lot of the British team are training in Edinburgh, or were at the time as well, still are. Yeah, they've got some great coaches up that way. And yeah, ended up spending 2 years there.
In Scotland?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So
what was that like?
it was good. They had a the most professional program, great strength training program. Yeah, but of course, you know, like no team you jump into is, you know, New Zealand team. So, you know, the support, yeah, like the support was great. They did everything for me. Like they just kind of claimed me as one of their team, just like in Germany, you know. I got big support wherever I went around the world, and I was kind of put in their programs, put in their strength training development.
So that generally they were hospitable, except on the mat?
Oh, definitely. I guess I was just way out of my depth in Germany, you know, when I was 17. And yeah, I basically trained with the Olympians. That year in Germany, actually, it was Ole Bischoff. It's one of the main guys I'd be training with, and yeah, I mean, training with, he just threw me around, right? He won Olympics that year, and then that was in, and then went back and got second the following Olympic Games. So, yeah.
How cool was that for a young guy to be training with these world level people?
My goal was to be Olympic champion. You know, I always wanted to be the best. He gave me his medal to put on, and you know, he was like, "Oh, do you want a photo?" And I was like, "Nah, I'll get one of these." You know, so yeah, I don't even have a photo of it. So
what'd you do for work when you were in Edinburgh and that?
I'm
always like, as
totally,
you know, as teachers and whatnot, and when you, because like people say, for example, not just you, but any of the other guys, their journey, you know, you see, say for example, Rob, you see Mark, or you see any of these other guys, and you go, oh, that's where they're at today. You know, we always talk about this, without people not earning their stripes, you know.
Yeah.
And then you think like, well, you went to the Commonwealth Games, you did judo. Judo's like, there's like wrestling, there's no money in it. There's very little money. Like
there's no money in it.
Even the world champions, even the very best guys that win the Grand Prix and that, they're still not on soccer player money. Do you know what I mean?
No way, nah.
No, and the sport's ridiculously hard. So how do you, you know, it's interesting to see, well, how does the rest of your life happen? It didn't just happen like nothing. So you were,
you're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, well, so for example, when you're in Germany, you were working of an evening, getting up in the morning for what? So first session 7 or 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assumption?
First session was like 8 in the morning, and I'll be walking there like a zombie because I worked all night as a security. So I walk into training in the morning, and I'd get on the mat. We'd have about 2 hours of, or hour and a half, 2 hours of technical. Then we'd jump in the gym straight after that. We would do a strength training program, which would be an hour and a half, and then be some hours break, and we'd come back at 6-7 p.m. at that night, and do randori, which is just straight up brawling. Yeah.
So what were you doing in Edinburgh for money?
I was working as security for a great amount of that time. It was just, you know, just the 5-6 day weeks at night from 10 p.m. till 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. Yeah.
And at what point did you start studying again?
So I did a bit of PT in between those hours as well, but for majority of that, some of that. So I started studying when I first got there. So I actually picked up correspondence through Massey University from New Zealand. Just paid for every semester at a time. Every paper, one by one. But I was like going to get my exams done in London. It was pretty hard, to find the money to get to London for my exams, let alone travel like around Europe and try and compete. And then fun training. But training, they just let me train for free, and they didn't ask for anything. So that was cool.
Okay, and then from Edinburgh, where'd you go? Hey, is Scotland dark and gloomy and cold and wet all the time?
Yeah, there's no sunshine, man. There's about 2 or 3 a year, and everyone takes their tops off and soaks up all the sun.
Because we had Rob's manager was up here, and he was talking about it, and he grew up in Scotland up until he was like 14.
Yeah.
And he said exactly what you just said, unprompted too. You just said exactly what he said.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's a hard place to live for 2 years, man. And that's why I came to Sydney, right? Because there's sunshine, man. So I was like missing the sunshine.
You went from Scotland here to Sydney straight away?
Yeah. So I came back to Sydney. I was just dreaming, standing on the doors out in the like -20 one night. I was just like, you know what? Fuck, the next place I go, my visa's up. I gotta go to Sydney. Yeah.
You've been here before?
Yeah, I've been here before. Back when I was in high school, I'd be flying to Auckland like for weekends. So I got funding, pub charity funding, to fly up to Auckland for Auckland squad training and national training sessions. And in my holidays, I'd fly over here to Sydney.
You got family here?
I got a couple of uncles here. Yeah, so one uncle from either side of my family just happened to be in Sydney, so yeah.
Okay, so then from Scotland you ended up here?
Yeah.
And all the while you were studying online?
No, like the first year in Scotland I was just too overloaded. I was working nights, I was training full time, I'd even walk on the mats. It's a bit dangerous, like I kept getting sick, walked on the mats like a zombie and just it's not good when you got such a dynamic sport and you have to recover and you have to do all this training. It's takes its toll. So I actually gave up studying my degree for that. I just kept falling asleep in my books, couldn't concentrate, couldn't even soak it up. But it's something I really loved and enjoyed, so I passed a few papers without doing a lot of study. But yeah, that wasn't good enough for me.
I did a whole degree like that.
Yeah. Oh man, I should have stuck to it.
It gets easier. You get better at doing that.
Yeah, totally. But I want to be good at my training, not good at my study at the time. I thought 100%. I only had one shot. So,
no, 100%. And then you came to Sydney. How old were you when you came to Sydney?
Oh, what was 23, 24, something like that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the Sydney judo scene like compared to Europe, say?
Yeah, so I was coming over here in school holidays, and it was good. Like it's quite.
Is the level good?
It's somewhere between, I guess, New Zealand and Europe. Yeah.
That's broad.
Yeah, that's pretty broad. I mean, yeah, there are never enough partners, right? Like there weren't enough partners, especially for me because I was a bit bigger. Yeah, there were a few clubs I jumped between. So I was in University of New South Wales Judo Club, so I fought for them, but I'd also go to Zembu Judo Club, so you've probably been there yourself.
Yeah, I know Morgan really well, yeah.
So great coach, great club, phenomenal club. So yeah, he'd always help me out and let me train there and trained all over the place. Even came to a few sessions with you.
100%, yeah.
So
did so then married that up to Commonwealth Games 2014.
Yeah, basically between as soon as I got here, I was a coach with UNSW Judo Club, so I'd coach judo and I'd work in University of New South Wales as a coach or PT, so I'd work in the gym there, and I'd go away like for 3 months back to Europe or over to Japan or somewhere in the world, and then I'd come back and I'd start again with my PT, and so I'd have to kind of get that money together, keep training, and then go back overseas and get back into it.
When did you complete your studies?
Well, I didn't complete the degree.
Your diploma, because you have a diploma in sport and fitness.
Yeah, so as soon as I got here, I did that. But yeah.
Was that hard for you to manage?
No, it was a lot easier doing the diploma because you could do it whenever you liked. It was, you didn't have the big exams. You could just, it was just a whole lot easier.
Conversations we've had, like separate conversations to other things we talk about, like I think now there's more grappling clubs. No, I think for sure there's more grappling clubs in Sydney
Yeah.
than 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. There's a lot more grappling clubs. There's a lot more, I guess, well, the internet. There's more
Oh, totally. Yeah.
knowledge as to
Definitely.
what's out there and whatnot. Can you talk to me a little bit about the transition from when you came up and being from a small town and, dealing with injuries, training, etc. Like, what's that like? And because I think you said to me you're running your own podcast now.
Yeah.
And one of the things behind that, the motivation behind that, is to be able to create resources for people to be able to use it, which you didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, so I trained and competed, like for 10 to 15 years, and I didn't have a lot of money. I was making my own way, so all my time went into either training and being the best athlete I could, or like earning that money to fund that dream. So I didn't have a lot of money to spend on physios and stuff outside that. So especially that mentality of just harden up. Like, just got to harden up. Just keep training.
And that's a good way to get injured as well.
Yeah, it's a great way to get injured. Trust me.
What injuries you had? Like,
I've had 5 surgeries now. So.
And you'll have
all at while I was training and competing, purely because I ignored those warning signs, which were.
How old are you?
28.
And what were the surgeries you've had?
So I've had ACL recon. Yeah. So what else? Groin reconstruction. That's like a adductor repair, conjoint tendon repair, and groinal hernia repair.
Yeah.
I've had operate on my foot twice, and I've had wrist surgery, 2 wrist surgeries, one on either side.
Wrist reconstructive surgery.
So I had a lunoscapho ligament reconstruction. It was the Com Games year, so 2014, and I was in Belgium. I was in a training camp, and I got my hand stuck in someone's gi. So at the time I was trying to throw somebody, and my hand was stuck. I went to just reverse that and get out of there, and he countered my throw and ended up on top of me with my hand just snapped the ligament, just stuck in between me and him. Yeah.
And so what do you? How'd you get to the games?
I was qualifying. I had qualified, I think, by that time. But yeah, I snapped. We just went to the Canadian physio. I was just like, "Oh, what's up with my hand? It's gonna be all right." Because in 3 days, I had the Paris Grand Slam. So that's like the biggest competition one of the biggest in the world. It's huge. But yeah, so she's like, "Oh, just stay out of training for a few days. You'll be fine." So I competed with one arm, and then after that, you got a training camp, and then I went to the Dusseldorf Grand Prix, which is another big one. And then I had a training camp after that for another 4 days before I went to Prague. I had a competition there before I went to another Olympic training center in Germany, and I trained there for the next 2 weeks. So I did have a few physio appointments in between. So after Dusseldorf Grand Prix, they have a training camp in the Olympic training center that I was training in 2008. Yeah, when I first went over there, and they gave me free physio and stuff, and they just put some zappy things on my wrist, be fine, it's just a bit of swelling. And then when I was in the other Olympic training center in Germany, I had 2 weeks there, and their sports doctor was just like, "Don't worry about it. You need to don't be a pussy." That's what he said to me. He's like, "Don't be a pussy. You don't need to."
Where's this guy from?
Oh, he's from Germany. It was Olympic. It was Olympic. He was the Olympic training center doctor.
Yeah,
so he's a sports physician in that facility, and I was taping it up. He's like, "Oh, you don't." He said this while he was like wiggling my wrist, trying to click it back in, right? So when I just kept falling out, pretty much. The joint kept dislocating. So
one of the things I found with those. Sorry, did you want to?
That's insane. harden up. Your risk isn't.
Yeah. Well, he was putting it back in too. And
here's a can of concrete. Suck it
yeah,
up.
pretty much.
Do you know one of the things that like just from seeing people train like all around the world and just being around in different places, and I've travelled all over as well, and I see countries that have like big numbers of athletes, and there's that just harden up, and you go because the way they do that, and then these guys that you develop them really tough and blah blah blah. And I think I was just talking about it with my friend the other day, and I'm like, no, you know what it is that you've got so many people that when you say that to a kid, it doesn't matter because you don't see the kid anymore. Yeah. And then you just see the next one pop up.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? No
problem.
Yes, yeah. So, and that's all it is. And I've worked with rugby league, and I'm not with rugby league, rugby union, different rugby codes here in Australia, and I see some of that attitude as well in the rugby league because there's so many good, talented kids that come through, and I've seen kids with teams, not necessarily that I've worked with, but maybe on another team that at 16, 17 years old shouldn't be back on the field, shouldn't be back on playing, or a kid's been knocked out. If he was boxing, if he was doing amateur boxing, he'd have like a medical suspension for
totally
60 days, 90 days, and they're like, no, mate, he splash some water and get back on the field,
Yeah.
And those diagnoses that people give, and they go, just harden up, mate, you'll be right. And it's crazy, but they've got so many judoka that they don't give a shit. Either he's right and he's the oracle, or he's not, and it's not his problem,
Yeah, you should be more resilient.
Yeah, like it's insane. So, but your injury wasn't a small injury. You ended up getting a
I knew
reconstruction.
something was seriously wrong. The next day I was coming out of training. He's like, well, what you got it strapped up for? He was outside having a cigarette.
The doctor's smoking too.
Basically, I came back to Sydney, and I went to see my physio straight away because I knew I had Com Games coming up in about three months. And he was just like, he just wiggled my wrist. He's like, look, man, we need to get you into surgery right now. Like, Com Games may not be an option for you. And so I went into surgery like the next week. Yeah. So a week after they told me I should just harden up.
Yeah, and what the problem is as well when you go to that, and that's like with Robin that we've talked about that heaps. Like you can go overseas and it's like the best camp in the world, but if it's not your camp with your people that they give a shit about, they don't give a fuck, man. They don't care. I see that. Like I've been to places, and you see people just get left on the side. You know what I mean? Especially like literally, it's like Lord of the Flies shit. What's it like traveling and competing all around the world in the Paris Grand Slam and all those other big competitions? What's that like? What's that experience like?
Competing is next level. You got the biggest crowds. In Japan's massive as well. Brazil's huge. You mean the experience from? Yeah, just because I think. What did I see and do, or how did that feel to be on the biggest stages in the world?
Either or, because I think again, wrestling, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they're all sports that people don't realize. Like these guys are not making money; they're just traveling the world, like competing against each other on these circuits. You know what I mean? Like, and there's no money. Like you see, like the kids. We had Sergio Pena here yesterday, and he's talking about his son did like 55 matches in a season as a freshman in high school or something, and I think he ended up being an All-American, and they gave him like a medal like this big. You know what I mean? No money, there's no nothing. It's just like good on you, champ. And judo is much the same. Like
judo is much the same, but
so what's for people that aren't judoka, that aren't wrestlers or don't do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it seems kind of counterproductive and insane. And but
you're insane too.
Yeah, fucking diagnosed. Stamp. No, but what's it like traveling the world for little to no money, spending all your money, getting injured, being at the mercy of these doctors and whatnot? What's that like?
It's great, man. It's great. I think what makes judo so special is so widespread. you know, it's got the widest spread medal tally of the Olympic Games. You know, there's so much competition, and people don't realize that there's so much competition. And you know, it's not just the money, because you know, in some countries they're competing for a better life. You know what I mean? They're taken from poverty, or everybody gets the same in that country as in, you know, some Russian Soviet ex-Soviet country, or you know, Russia for that matter, and you know, they're given houses, they're given cars, and a lavish life to live if they're champion, you know. So max, you know, gold medals any country will get is like 2, right? So maybe 3 if they're lucky. Yeah, it's just so widespread, so much competition. It's not just money, you know, you're fighting for glory. But yeah, I just felt like there was something in me that I thought, you know, I'm the one, like I'm the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
So-
what was the transition? So you went to the Commonwealth Games. How'd you go in the Commonwealth Games?
So yeah, like I had wrist surgery obviously 3 weeks before, and then yeah, I went back to Europe about a month and a half after. I was just strapped up my wrists and went back to Europe to get in competition condition. So yeah, I was doing the training camps through Europe. On my last it was my last day of the last camp. I fell on my side and popped my sternum and pulled some muscles in my back. So I went to Com Games, you know, not being able to grip anything and not being able to turn, but yeah, won my first one, and then yeah, my second one I lost on a penalty, and then my third one I lost on a penalty as well. So yeah.
And then the
So-
transition from athlete to what is it you do now? Like what are you doing now? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, training, competing for, you know, yeah, over 10 years is kind of, you know, I want to give back to the fight community. Basically, I traveled this path, you know, learning and educating myself in the sport and fitness and strength and conditioning side of things to complement my sport and where I was going with it. So I knew from an early age that's what I wanted to do, and that's, you know, both would help the other in long term. I looked past my career as an athlete and said, well, if I'm going to be the best at the sport, you know, if I invest so many years of practice and development into this one sport, you know, I want it to really align with, you know, I want something else, my career, my possible career to reflect with that. So basically, so yeah, I just wanted to perform at my best. So I looked at strength and conditioning and developing my knowledge in that area. But you know, now it's about giving back. You know, I don't want other athletes, their visions, their dreams to die in vain like mine did. I just feel like I can, you know, with all that experience in my sport and in strength and conditioning, I can give back to other athletes. And
When you say die in vain, what do you mean by that?
In vain, I mean, you know, when if you could overcome say injuries, if you didn't have those injuries, if you had resources, if you had the means to train better within your sport, you know, you're much more likely to achieve your dream, right? So yeah, I just want to ensure that no one falls to those hurdles like I did.
I think it's hard being where we are in the world a lot of the times, like in these particular niche sports kind of thing, like, because when you do go overseas, you're not with your team, or you're not with people surrounding you, don't have that infrastructure, and it's massive, and people don't. I think a lot of the young athletes, unless you've got big bankroll behind you or something, but exactly what you said, like you go to a particular country, but unless the first thing I see in a lot of the countries that are hotbeds of these combat sports, or any sport really for that matter, like there's so many guys that it's not necessarily even the best program. It's just so many guys. My mum could train them, and the best guys are still, you know what I mean, the best guy. And if you do it over, like, say 50 years, the best guys are going to rise to the top. The best out of those guys are going to become coaches, but not necessarily is the best care being given. And if you're an outsider, it's not it's very hard. It's very, very hard. And I think a lot of young guys don't understand that when they're going over there, and probably that's what happened with you as well. Like, and it's hard because you're kind of having to diagnose your own injuries, look after yourself in that regard.
Yeah, you got to have your own back.
It's hard, but it's a real hard thing. Dave, do you have any questions at all?
I was interested in your motivation. So pretty much, so you left at the age of 17, decided to go across the whole world in a sport that you kind of knew wasn't overly going to make you a millionaire. Come back, see some wicked doctors who tell you to harden up, break different parts of your body, and then ultimately after all that, you come back and you're telling us now that you've become a coach so that people in your position could achieve more because you have the skills inside you now to tell people about, this is probably a safer way how to do it. So if I was you at 17, what would you tell yourself?
I would totally tell myself to, go see a physio, go see a doctor. But the amount of times I've been misdiagnosed is astronomical too, right? Like, so, all around Europe, like I said before, I got this misdiagnosed. I was misdiagnosed before Commonwealth Games. Actually, I had an impingement. What they told me was an impingement in my hip, which turned out to be an inguinal hernia, which turned out to be not just an inguinal hernia, but a torn adductor and a torn conjoint tendon. And I know the torn inguinal hernia happened like some years before. I think it started in the Olympic camp when I was in 2008. Like, I just didn't get it treated, and I know I tore my adductor when I was training in Uzbekistan. So I was training at the Olympic training facility for 3 months in Uzbekistan. That was, I think 2014, looking towards 2016 Olympic Games. And I just tore my adductor after training. So I was stretching, and it's just, someone tried to play a joke on me and just thought, we'll just pull them that extra bit further like you do, and just tore my adductor.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, mate. But I think that was because, it must have tore the conjoint tendon already, and the inguinal hernia, like nothing's about anything. So, I mean, if I was to say one thing, just, like take the doctor's advice, like, with a grain of salt, of course, but... Yeah,
it's. I think one of the things on that we were saying with Mark about like what I see with young guys that are competing is the first thing I would say to them is like, what's their motivation behind going? Like, if it's, I think Mark is one of the rare people that is going to go to Europe and he's going to train and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas a lot of times kids go over there and they want to party and train a little bit, and then that's the first thing I'll say to you. If that's what you want to do, just go and party. You know what I mean? Because the two things are not going to mix. You know what I mean? And then the other thing I think with young people like that is, have you, and depending on the sport obviously, because like say wrestling and judo, it's reasonably limited here. There are some good clubs, but it's still limited as far as competition. But the second thing I would say is, have you exhausted, and I honestly would say this, for you I think it's a little bit different because you came from a tiny town. But when people are in Sydney, and I say this to people, Rob says this to people all the time from a fighting perspective, is, have you actually exhausted all the resources that Sydney, I can only speak of Sydney has available to you? Because I'm not talking about if you're like from Burke or something like that, then you're going to have to probably come to Sydney. But have you actually exhausted all those avenues, gone through all your partners, etc., and then now you can go overseas? That's would be my advice, because if you don't want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the first morning session in Sydney, you're not going to want to.
You're not going to survive overseas.
Nah. Do you know what I mean?
Nah. first of all, I didn't go overseas and party because I had no money to party. Like I was barely getting by. Like I barely had food on the table. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been luxury, but I didn't have that. So yeah, I mean, definitely, man. Especially like here in Sydney, it's a hub, right? When I was 17, or even younger than that, when I realised my goal was that, because I was actually in the New Zealand Institute of Sport, and they'd be doing a bit of programming for me and my strength training stuff, which back in the day was like, oh, here's you know, your phase 1 of Bosu ball training, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, from there it was like, oh, look, you know, we can't support you if you're thinking about going overseas. And I was like, well, to get better, I need to train with the best, and the best aren't here, they're overseas. So, and I knew I needed to move. Like, majority of people going to Auckland, but I just wanted to think bigger than that. And yeah, like I knew I had one shot, so I went to where the big guns were. Yeah.
All right. No, because yeah, like you so the New Zealand scene versus the Australian scene in judo, is New Zealand a lot smaller?
A lot smaller, yeah. Yeah.
In terms of judoka?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's so widespread in New Zealand. And you got a few training overseas, so you never really got the best training in one spot. And that's a problem. Like, I would have drove for 6 hours to get to, you know, the next biggest city. I was training between 2 clubs in my hometown, which is Nelson and Motueka. I really belonged to like both clubs. Like, they were, and that's why I like your mentality when it comes to coaching. You're like, you know, you tell people like you need to go to the best spot for the best thing, and you put it together, right? You put the training program together, and that's why I was interested in your philosophy on, you know, not oh, you can't train anywhere else, because my coach came to me at, I think it was 15 or 16, he said, look, Mark, you need to look bigger than us. If you want to, like, I think you can go all the way. If you think you can go all the way, you gotta, you know, you gotta step your foot in the deep end and get out of here, because you've outgrown me a long time ago, and you know I can't facilitate everything you need right here. So yeah, that's it. Like,
it's tough from those tiny little places.
And I wish so many other coaches would do the same. Like, you know, they would let their coaches train other places, you know, because the competition's never always in one place. Like, so yeah.
Dave? So Mark, so now you're doing some strength and conditioning training. Whereabouts are you doing that, and where can people find you? How can people find you?
So I'm based in Fitness Playground.
Where is that?
So that's in Surrey Hills. Yeah, there's a few fitness playgrounds around here in Sydney, but yeah, I'm based in Surrey Hills, just on Elizabeth Street, just outside Central Station. And yeah, basically now I'm trying to create resources for fighters, like Fighters Performance Podcast, which I've invited you to be featured on last week.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, so you know, bit of advice from Fab and drawing on his experience. I don't know if you
want to follow my advice, but
yeah,
but your podcast called Fighters Performance
Podcast. Yeah.
Where can we find
that? It will be launched this week. Yeah, I'm really bad at the technical side of things, but that's another resource for fighters.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's what I'm driven to do. So I spent the last few years like coaching, you know, the athletic demographic, so people that are involved in sports and sport as their passion. You know, they're trying to improve their performance, but you know, it was late last year where I realized, look, you know, the real reason I'm here is because of judo and my background in fighting sport, and I want to see other fighters train and compete to the level that, you know, they can with the resources. So I want to really make information available for them so they can make their choices to, you know, draw on that and yeah, take advice.
Where are you coaching
to put
judo?
them in the right direction? I train at UTS or coach at UTS, so UTS Judo Club.
Okay. Yeah, is it a big gym, big club?
So started back in May. I'm just helping out with the coaching and a bit of the curriculum, and yeah, I'm just helping them establish the club there.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So just in closing, Mark, where can we find you? Like on Instagram, Twitter. Like how can you? Where can people find you if they want to? Some of your coaching, some of your expertise. What's your Instagram, your Twitter, and that?
So yeah, you can find me. So I ran a business called Strength Alchemy. You can find me at Strength Alchemy on Instagram or on Facebook. You can also reach me on Fighters Performance anywhere on Instagram or Facebook. Reach out.
No worries.
Yeah, email me on mark@fightersperformance.com.au.
Beautiful. Mark, thank you very much for your time. I know you're very busy, and thank you for coming out and seeing us.
No
Thanks
worries,
a lot.
man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Fab.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks a lot, Mark.